Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 13 game slate. This is an absolutely monster slate, so be careful on this one. We typically play light on these giant slates because there's so much randomness going on. There's also several weather concerns throughout the slate, but we won't know too much about those until later in the slate. So I'm just going to operate as if they're all going to go as well. Yesterday in our main slate, we had 9 home runs, and we actually picked 6 of the players in our write-up, so that's pretty good. Definitely like that. Surprised that there wasn't that many home runs yesterday, but I suspect there's going to be a lot of them today. Before I get started, too, I'm just going to note that I'm not sure how I'm going to be making videos the next week or so. My dad is currently in hospice, and we're getting ready to deal with some of the stuff. So just keep in mind if I don't post videos for a couple days or any write-ups or something, that's why. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the slate here. So we're going to start with our pitchers. Now, Cortez is our top overall pitcher today for the Yankees against the White Sox. The White Sox have been terrible. He's got the best K rate on the slate outside of Scuball for Arizona or for Detroit, excuse me, and he has the best earned runs against potential today. So I think he's in a really good spot here. He obviously can give up a home run every now and then, but he does have good matchups metrics here, and he's definitely in play today. So we'll move on to Kyle Harrison. Is another, he's a GPP play and a contrarian option at $8,200. He's pretty cheap today. Got a favorable matchup against Colorado at home. He also already faced Colorado on the road in Colorado and did fairly well. The strikeout stuff is not perfect, but it's still decent, so he's a good play on the slate. Reagans is also interesting for Kansas City against Oakland. He doesn't give up too many home runs, so that does give him a lot of upside in this matchup. Oakland is a team that's very boom or bust, so I think he's a good GPP play, but he's not a must play by any stretch of imagination. Paxton for the Dodgers is also in play today. He has some nice upside on this slate, though it is a tough matchup against Cincinnati, as Cincinnati has been playing pretty well up and down, though. So I do think this game is going to be somewhat high scoring, but I think Paxton can limit some of uh, some of the Reds, but I think that there's a couple guys that have some potential from them. Looking at Max Fried for Atlanta, he's got a favorable matchup with San Diego. Now, San Diego actually does look pretty good in this matchup, but he's been really solid the last 4 games. And I look for him, and he's got a pretty tough matchups in those as well. So I think he's got some good upside here, and he's priced pretty fairly. He's a good GPP play, and he's got decent strikeout stuff here. Then we're going to look at Christian Scott. Now he's only played a couple of games so far, but he's actually done very well against two really good teams. And now he gets a nice, easier matchup against Miami, who's really been struggling. His strikeout stuff is pretty solid, and he definitely draws some good matchup metrics here. And so I do think he's a viable option on the slate, though he does carry a little bit of risk with the strikeout potential. But I do like his upside, especially in a favorable matchup. I'm going to mention uh, Chris Bassett for Toronto. Now he's pretty cheap today. He is a GPP play as well. He's got a pretty low floor for this matchup, but he has a good ceiling, and I definitely like his potential. Uh, I do think he's got good metrics for this game, so he has a lot of upside, and he's a viable option on the slate. I also like Skubal, though he's very expensive. The catch here is he's got the highest strikeout potential on the slate, and that's really good. He's also got a high ceiling. He's only had 1 game all season long under 20 fantasy points. The reason he's a contrarian GPP play today is simply because his matchup is tougher than a lot of the other options. I do like some Arizona bats as well today, but it's a decent day for him. So I think he's got a good opportunity for a solid game regardless. Though he's very expensive, and you don't really want to need to use multiple 9,500 plus guys. So I think Cortez is the best option though from that perspective. I do have a few extreme GPP plays, and John Means, Jesus Lazardo, Andrew Heaney, and Brian Bello. And then I have a Hail Mary and Freddie Peralta just because of the matchup going up against Houston's pretty rough. But he is a good pitcher with decent strikeout potential. So that's what I have for this slate from the pitcher's perspective. So let's go ahead and get into the bats. Now, for catcher, we do have a lot of very good options across the board. I'm actually just going to move this over because I need to go a little bit faster today. So for the top overall options, Salvador Perez, William Contreras, and Adley Rutschman, I'll draw really good matchup metrics. I like Perez a lot, though he's very expensive today. We do have a lot of value plays here in Freddie Furman, Danny Jansen, and Mitch Garver. And then we also have some Hail Mary type plays in O'Hope, Diaz, Heim, Rowley, Naylor, and Stevenson. And I would consider using those guys if you end up stacking their individual teams. Looking at first base, Otani, Vlad Jr., Freddie Freeman, Josh Naylor, and Matt Olson are all very close in their metrics today. There's a lot of good plays on this slate because of this. I think it's going to be pretty high scoring. With the value plays here, Wade Jr., Nevin, and Bowers are in play. I do think you're going to try to pay up at this first base position, though. The value is kind of weak. Looking at second base, there's not a lot of expensive plays other than Altuve and Marte that look really good, but there's plenty of value in Davis Schneider, Rengifo, and Hampson. I really like Schneider and Rengifo a lot, and then Hampson's a good GPP play and dirt cheap option as well. Looking at the top plays for third base, Miguel Garcia looks absolutely phenomenal today, as does Rafael Devers, and neither one of them are super expensive. But if you want to save money here, Zach McKinstry is a great option. Rengifo can also play here at third. And then Justin Turner for Toronto, Bregman for Houston, and Nolan Arenado are all in play as well. Looking at our shortstops here, we have Witt Jr., Gunnar Henderson, and Mookie Betts all looking absolutely fantastic. However, I think you can go with the value plays today with Bo Bichette being the top overall option. He looks really solid today. I think Willie Adames looks good, but he's a little bit overpriced. Lindor is contrarian, and then Zach McKinstry can also play here as a cheap option. Maybe the outfielders, our top four guys are Acuna, Otani, Soto, and Riley Green. I really like all four of these guys quite a bit. I think I would rank them Otani, Acuna, Soto, and then Riley Green, but Riley Green looks really good just as himself. For the value plays here, we got a ton of guys that we can consider today. Blanco, Kerry Carpenter, and Ruiz and Perez all have the most upside. Lowe, Springer, Marte, Nootbaar, and Schneider are kind of the contrarian options here, but I think Schneider fits in really good at second base. And then Hunter, Renfroe, Ryan O'Hearn, Jarren Duran, Velasquez, Michael Harris, Brent Rooker, and Cedric Mullins are all really good contrarian plays. This position is very deep, and so you can mix and match these guys a lot. I would say if you go with stacking a lot today, then you definitely want to stack up the different guys from those teams. So if you use a Kansas City stack, look at Blanco and Renfroe. If you go with a Toronto stack, look at Schneider and Springer. If you go with a Baltimore stack, Ryan O'Hearn and Cedric Mullins, and so forth and so on. But that's a really good position today. I don't think you need to pay up for the top guys, but Riley Green might be the one guy you want to consider paying up for there if you can afford to from Detroit. So looking at the sub 3,000 plays, we don't have as many today as we did yesterday. On yesterday's small slate, we had like 15 guys. Today we have like a few, even though it's a massive slate. But Hunter Renfroe for Kansas City strikes me as one of the best options. McKinstry for Detroit also looks really solid. So does Velasquez for Kansas City. I think Kansas City is going to be a sneaky stack today. Garrett Hampson, Harrison Bader, that's Bader, Colt Keith, Jared Kalenic, and Otto Lopez all have good potential there. So here's our stacks for this slate. We do have quite a few guys to consider, quite a few good stacks here. My 5 top stacks are Texas, LA Dodgers, Atlanta, New York Yankees, and Toronto. These are all fairly expensive stacks, but they have a lot of upside, and there's enough value between them that you can pay for whatever pitchers you want for the most part, and then mix in the value plays around them. For the next group of stacks, I actually wanted to move Kansas City up here because I think this stack is just better than what the suggestion is. For Cleveland, Detroit, Baltimore, San Francisco, Minnesota, Boston, Houston, Milwaukee, and Kansas City, all these teams have really good upside in this slate, and I think these are very stackable teams. I'm a little concerned about Houston, but for the rest of these teams, I think these are all really solid stacks. And so you want to kind of mix and match these stacks in your GPP lineups here. As for the sub stacks here with the St. Louis down to the White Sox, this group of stack, at least this third group, this is a decent group. It's not great, but it's definitely contrarian, and it's definitely a way to be different. I don't think that many of these stocks are going to pay off, but I do think they have some upside. These bottom 4 stacks with Oakland, Cincinnati, Colorado, and Chicago White Sox are very Hail Mary type stacks. These are super risky, likely won't cash, but if one of those teams does get hot, they could do pretty well. And if you mix and match them with some guys that hit on runs, then you can definitely pay off here. So with that said, guys,